It is now 6 p.m. All 5 select board members are in attendance and the town manager. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Great Barrington Select Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public, and or parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so by following the instructions at the top of the agenda. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive recording of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Pursuant to Mass General Law 7C 30A, Section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recordings. This meeting is being recorded by CTSB. It's being recorded by the EDGE and our recorder, as well as other individuals. Any members of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. The listing of agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. Start with the approval of minutes. We have August 24th, 2020 and September 14th, 2020.
Motion to approve both.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Ed, a second by Bill. Discussion.
I have one very minor correction, September 14th. Item 5, which is a public hearing, the 6th bullet point. Holly Hamer's last name was spelled incorrectly. The correct spelling is Hamer. And I sent that to Amy.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all votes in virtual meetings are roll call. So start with Lee.
Aye.
Kate.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Ed.
Aye.
And aye. It's a unanimous vote. Select board's announcement or statements. Lee.
Yes, I spoke briefly with Mark about this, so I was just hoping, and I believe Mark will be doing this for some clarification on the state of affairs in Great Barrington with regards to COVID, and also if there's some way that we can get the updated information, probably on the website, which it probably is, but specifically about the rollout of phase 2 vaccinations. I know there's a lot of concern about when that will be and how people can pre-register. So anything we can do to make it easier for residents is appreciated.
Thank you. Kate.
No.
Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Ed.
A couple of things. One, I just came from the Historical Commission meeting, and they asked me to ask Mark to ask Mr. Mahida the status of the Searle School, just how that's going, if you can get back to them. Although I'm sure we'd all like to know. The other thing is, I observed there was a vaccine clinic last Saturday at the middle school, and for, I think, still phase 1, incredibly efficient. BHS and Fairview, Berkshire County Boards of Health, and CHP, which I think gave some vaccines, was pulled together by Heather Barberi, who has been doing a lot of this emergency response. But there's 3 sites, one in Great Barrington, one in Pittsfield, one in North County. And moments ago, like a second before Lee said what she said, I got a text from Heather who said, the governor has made the announcement that they can start vaccinating people 75 and older next Monday, and she plans to have a clinic next week. It'll be made public on Wednesday, how to register via computer and by calling a hotline. So how was that for a fast response, Lee?
That's great. You read my mind.
I'm in there.
So yeah, it'd be great to get that on the website. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Town manager's report.
Thanks, Steve. So I do have an update to provide from the health department this evening. Rebecca's also on the line, so we can promote her to a panelist if you have any
Sure.
specific questions. First off on my list here is the Houstonic Waterworks company. Just again, a brief update this week. Engineers from both firms, DPC and ACOM, our engineering firms, were in town last week for a site visit at the Houstonic Waterworks site and to gather data from their offices, copies of maps, filtration plans and consumption data, sanitary surveys from DEP, dam inspection reports, and so on. Sean was also here, met with them, Sean Van Duzen, our public works superintendent, and offered the use of our large copier here so that they could take all of that information back with them to help the process along. So Houstonic Waterworks has been incredibly cooperative, so I wanted to thank them and just let you know that things are progressing. COVID-19, again, Lee had asked for an update tonight, and I did get a prepared update from Rebecca Jerzik, our health agent, so I'll just read that, and then if you have any questions, she'd be happy to address them. She's, like I said, on the line. January 25th, 2021, the Department of Public Health announces weekly data every Thursday around 5 p.m. This report is pulled directly from the Maven Disease Surveillance System on the Tuesday prior at 11:59 p.m. Over the last month, Great Barrington has seen a steady increase in positive cases, leaving us in the higher risk or red category. While this is a result of many reasons, rise in cases was expected after the end of the holidays. More recently, there's been cluster outbreaks in some of our local congregate care facilities. As of today, approximately 68 positive cases of COVID-19 are contained within our congregate care and long-term care facilities. Berkshire Medical Center and Fairview Hospital have assisted in the management of these clusters by administering monoclonal antibody therapy. This treatment drastically improves the symptoms and recovery for many that receive it. State and local health departments and state and local departments of public health are in daily communication with facilities identified as having a cluster outbreak to address and contain transmission. The federal pharmacy program through CVS has distributed the first dose of Pfizer vaccine to several of our long-term care facilities, and the second dose is scheduled prior to the end of January. So that explains the sudden increase we're seeing here in town.
Anyone have any questions for Rebecca or Mark?
I just had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there was some confusion whether Fairview Hospital was taking in COVID patients. And I'd just like to clarify that, or if they were to go straight to BMC.
Rebecca, do you want to answer that? I know the answer, but prefer Rebecca answer it.
Hi. Yeah, Steve, you can supplement if you'd like, but yes, Fairview Hospital has had capacity right along since last March to take and keep COVID patients. I know that they're not keeping the critically ill patients, but they have plenty of capacity and have been doing a marvelous job with treating coronavirus there.
So for a resident that has symptoms, they just call the hotline and then, or do they call before they come in? Or if you just kind of walk us through if someone is feeling, sick and hasn't had a test, and if there's any protocol they should be following.
Yeah, if we don't want to delay going to the emergency room if you're feeling ill, because it could worsen. But yeah, so it's always best to give the ER a heads up. That way they can put the proper PPE in place and so I'm getting a bit of feedback. And I can put the hotline number in the chat that you can call, but yeah, you can just call this number and then go to the ER, and they'll treat you accordingly.
Rebecca, we have the chat feature disabled, so if you could post that on your webpage, that would be great.
Oh, sure. Yep. Is that helpful, or do you have any other questions?
Yes, that's helpful. Thank you, Rebecca.
I
Anyone
have
else?
one.
Yeah, go ahead. Mark.
I have one last update, but if anyone has any other questions.
I think we need to be clear that what Rebecca said is totally accurate, but Fairview is perfectly safe if you have other symptoms. What we were seeing early on in this pandemic is people who were sick with other maladies, whether it be heart disease or whether whatever it was, were afraid to go to hospitals. And that was making them sicker by the time they did go. But any hospital is perfectly safe to go to. And I urge people who are sick enough that they think they need hospitalization, or at least to be seen by a doctor, to go to their nearest hospital and not be afraid of catching COVID. Anyone else? Mark, go ahead.
Okay. Like I said, one last update. I just wanted to take this opportunity to announce that a new intern will be working with us for the next 5 to 6 months. Katie Orenstein, she's a Great Barrington resident and student at Dartmouth College, will be helping us expand our social media presence in hopes of reaching new residents, second homeowners, our younger residents, and reaching our year-round residents on other platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, other platforms besides Facebook. So Katie's a film and theater major and has experience working with local nonprofits on marketing and social media campaigns. So we're looking forward to having her join our team next week. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Licenses and permits. Recommendation to the ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals, on the special permit application from Frank Leonard Merchant and Ruth Ann Merchant for the expansion of a non-conforming home at 73 Castle Hill Avenue, Great Barrington, filed in accordance with section 5.3, 5.5, and 10.4 of the zoning bylaw.
Steve, yeah,
Yes.
I have to recuse myself. I'm in a butter.
Okay, thank you. So Lee is recusing herself.
We do have their attorney on the line here, and
Can
he should be able to talk.
Right.
I just unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening, members of the Select Board. My name is David Schreier. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Cooley Schreier at 1380 Main Street in Springfield. We represent Frank Leonard Merchant and Ruth Ann Merchant, the owners of 73 Castle Hill Avenue, in their petition before the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit. The planning board heard this matter at their last meeting, and they have voted to recommend it to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I do not have a copy of their written recommendation, but I understand that there are some minor non-substantive conditions that they have added to it, which our clients have no problem with and approve. I have with me also online and intending to participate, both Mr. and Mrs. Merchant, Craig Okerstrom Lang, and David Parsons of Green River Design, who will discuss the specifics of the new structure which is proposed. This is a non-conforming use because the northerly boundary line is 11.2 inches rather than the 20-foot sideline setback, which is required by the current zoning bylaw.
I believe that's 11.2 feet.
Yes, 11.2 feet.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, 11.2 feet. Based on a 1905 Barnes and Farnham map, which the town planner located. The structures, the current structure was already on the property at that point, and the zoning bylaw didn't come into effect until 1932, which therefore makes this a legal non-conforming use. Section 5.3 of the zoning bylaw provides that the Board of Appeals may grant a special permit. I'm sorry, what? Oh.
That's me. I'm sorry. I forgot I was.
Not a problem. Pursuant to section 10.4, to reconstruct, extend, alter, or change a non-conforming structure, only if it determines that such reconstruction, extension, alteration, or change shall not be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming structure. The special permit is requested for construction of a new master bedroom, home office, and pool/mechanical room addition off the southwest corner of the existing single-family residence, which addition will contain 640 square feet of ground floor area and a new 29 square foot porch. On the plans that you have and the documents that you have with our original submission, there are two minor errors. First of all, the land coverage was incorrectly calculated, including the in-ground swimming pool, for which a building permit has already been issued, at 19.9%. In fact, the lot coverage will be much more favorable at 15.4%, because the structures will total 2,208 square feet. There is also a typo on the north setback. It should be 20 feet. Other than that, what you have, I believe, is 100% correct.
Before you go ahead, I'm gonna let Garfield I want to see what, he has his hand raised. I want to see if it's a process question. If it is, I'll allow him to ask it. If it's an opinion, I'll wait till we're almost done. Garfield, go ahead. Garfield, just unmute yourself. This is a good time for me to say, if you're muted on a phone, it's raise your hand to *9, and then to unmute it's *6. Garfield, go ahead.
That was an accidental raising of my hand. So
okay, I respected you enough to recognize that. That's
Thank you.
Garfield.
I appreciate that.
Okay, go right ahead.
We're back on?
You're back on.
Kate, she's adorable. The existing single-family residence is a small farmhouse, as I say, constructed in the early 1900s, sometime around 1901 or 2, which was totally renovated by a previous owner. It fits nicely into the context of the neighborhood. The proposed addition will mimic the existing main house in all respects, including roof, siding, windows, color tones, and scale. We believe that the structure has been carefully and tastefully designed by David Potter of Green River Design. The roof will be raised seam, gunmetal tone, the windows will be black, and the siding will be white. In particular, the addition will not increase the non-conforming nature of the structure, and therefore will not be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming structure. At this point, I believe that it's appropriate to ask David and Craig to become involved, share the screen so that they can show the select board the specifics of the structure and the landscaping.
That's fine.
David, Craig?
I'm here.
I'm here. Craig here.
Which one? Dave, you want to go first?
I can, Mark. Can you pull up the drawings?
This guy, I think. Or Mark here? Okay.
You should be able to share your screen.
Oh, that's not how we did it the last time. They just pulled up the drawings on your side.
Can Chris did that at the planning board.
You
Well,
have one, Fred?
This is Chris. The board has the drawings in front of them in their packet. And starting, I think on page 18 or so of their packet, and you folks could probably walk them through it.
Alrighty. David, why don't you go first? David, talk.
All right. Well, if you look at drawing SP, my drawing package, there's an existing site plan and the proposed site plan. Existing site plan is taken from the survey done by Mike Parsons. So it's showing property lines, setback lines, shows the structure non-conforming on the north side of the building. Not only is the back porch, but the residence itself is non-conforming. A portion of the front porch is non-conforming, but that's an exception. So the proposed site plan, all we're doing is adding an addition off the southwest side. We're within setbacks on the addition. It's showing the pool. We had originally included the pool in our structural requirements, and we were told at the last meeting that pools aren't required as structure, so that helped our numbers. We're adding a driveway extension to the back of the house for parking for 2 cars. And there's landscaping going up and down between the pool and the house. It's a hilly site. That's all just a dry laid landscaping. If you look at the page A1, it's just floor plans. We go to A2, we're showing the existing east elevation, which is the road side of the house. And then beneath that is the existing elevation with the addition behind it. Due to the slope of the grade, we have 2.5 stories. Main story is the owner's new master bedroom suite. And the upstairs is an office. And then the lower level is going to be used for the pool, everything that goes on with pool activity. Next page, A3, is the south elevation. So we're showing the existing elevation at the top. We're showing the addition, which is coming off right off the corner of that sunroom there. That's the gable end of the addition. Materials and roofing are all going to be very similar to what's on the existing house. The house has been completely renovated. It's a really nice old home that's been really nicely redone. It's more of a contemporary farmhouse style now, and we're carrying that theme through.
On Victor's house.
Page A4, we're showing the west elevation and then the west side of the new addition. So this would be the closest part to you, the back of the property. There's some slight grade modification to allow the parking area in the back. Planning board wanted us to move the driveway away from the property line a bit, which we said that was fine. And then A5 is showing the north elevation, which is from the driveway side, so you can see the porch that's not conforming there, and off on the right is the new addition. So very similar to the existing house in design, smaller in scale. Everything's within setbacks. Everything complies with bylaws, or zoning. So that's our project. Any questions?
Board, do we have any questions from any board members?
Yeah, I just was wondering, you said the planning board was asking if you could move the driveway away from the property line. Were there any other things that they asked, since you don't have a written, sorry, I'm getting played on a video at the same time. Any other requirements that they suggested? I was just, since we don't have it written, I'd like to hear.
Maybe it was moving the driveway, and what was the other one?
I don't know, I'm asking.
I thought it was just moving the driveway. There may have been one other item, but I thought that it was just moving the driveway.
Greg can answer that. Can you hear me?
I
Yes,
think there was some screening added on that side.
What they asked is by shifting the driveway over a little bit, the parking area, that gives us room to add screen plants along the property line.
thank you, Craig.
Yeah, the back of the property looks out to the neighbor's property, an old concrete tennis court, so.
I think Mom might need her phone.
I
screening
have,
would act-
sorry.
the screening would actually work best both ways, so that allows that to happen.
I'm sure this has been taken into consideration, and I can't read elevation drawings as well as, an engineer can, but just thinking of the fact that it is a somewhat of a hilly site, there's taking into account drainage to neighboring houses because of runoff and the nature of the hill.
Yeah, Craig can address that. There was considerable engineering done on the project.
But the task, in your packet, the task is the letter from John Chester, a professional engineer. And Don looked at the site, and he recommended that basically an infiltrate would be installed, which is like a high well. That any of the new roof gutters would be directed. The existing roof gutters, they don't pose any problem. So then it basically acts as a turn, and it slowly, the water just runs directly onto any neighbor's property and seeps into the soil. When used on a number of sites.
Okay, is there anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, anyone in the audience? Garfield, you have your hand up again. We'll see if this is accidental or intentional. Go ahead, Garfield. I'm not hearing anything, so.
I think that's Eileen you moved up.
Yeah, I did by mistake. Which Mark will.
I have nothing, Stephen. I don't know how that happened.
Okay, no problem. Anyone else in the audience? Seeing no hands raised, do I have a motion?
Keep
Motion.
showing up.
Motion to send a positive recommendation to the ZBA.
No, second.
So I have a motion by Ed and a second by Bill to send a positive recommendation. Anyone else from the select board? Hearing no one, it's a roll call vote. Kate,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Ed.
Aye.
And it's a unanimous vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna move one thing on the agenda. I'm gonna promote Lucy Prashkar and if I can find who else is here. Peter Taylor. And this is item number 6B, the Regional District Planning Committee Budget Request Presentation. And just for the sake of transparency, I am a member of the Regional School District Planning Board. Lucy, Peter, go right ahead. If you want me to promote anyone else, let us know.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for inviting us tonight. Just to begin, I want to make clear who we are and who we're not. So I am the chair of the Regional School District Planning Board, which is a relatively new entity. It was formed in March of 2020. I am not a member of the Berkshire Hills Regional School Committee. I'm not a member of the Southern Berkshire Regional School Committee. The Regional School District Planning Board is a creature of statute. It was created by the 8-member towns that comprise those 2 regional school districts. And as the statute requires, it's made up of 3 members from each of the 8-member towns. So it's a board of 24 members. 3 of those members are Town of Great Barrington representatives, Steve Bannon, Peter Taylor, who's on the line with me. He's the vice chair of the planning board, and Deb Phillips are the Great Barrington representatives. So the statutory mandate for one of these boards is that we study the educational and financial advisability of consolidation. And soon after we formed 3 subcommittees: the Educational Quality Subcommittee, the Finance Subcommittee, the Operations Subcommittee, and each one of those subcommittees is charged with looking at that same big picture issue from their particular vantage point. It's the intent of the planning board to examine the feasibility of consolidation along a broad spectrum of options, with shared services and shared programs being on one side of the spectrum, and full pre-K through 12 consolidation of the 2 regional school districts on the other side of the spectrum, and other options in between. As would be the case in any potential school regionalization, the issues to be studied are many and complex. And the planning board is going to require considerable time and effort of its 24 volunteer members, and also significant outside expertise and resources. We can't do this alone. We have a very strong board with a lot of experience in lots of different areas. We have select board members, we have school committee representatives. There must be at least 1 school committee representative from each of the 8-member towns on the planning board, and we've got those. We've got people with accounting experience, financial analysis experience, a little bit of legal experience. So we've got really a lot of educators. We've got a broad range of experience, and we've got a very dedicated and committed board. But this effort is going to take hundreds of hours of commitment from each of those board members, thousands of hours of volunteer effort. We're pleased with the progress so far. As a first step, we engaged a facilitator to help us facilitate dialogue and discussion. We also engaged the Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools, known as MARS, to provide some preliminary reports that analyze baseline financial data, where we are now and where we might be in 5 years if we didn't change our current models of operation. We also asked them to look at our current district facilities, their condition and capacities, and we asked them to look at the collective bargaining agreements of the 2 Unit A collective bargaining units of the 2 districts and to compare those. And the materials that they generated, together with some enrollment reports that we got from the New England School Development Council, NESDEC, are all posted on our webpage, which is in the letter, which I hope is in the packet that you all received, our letter dated January 14th, which we sent to all the select boards. We looked at those reports, and what those reports showed was that we've had a lot of enrollment decline over the last 10 years in both districts, and those declining enrollment trends are likely to continue. And that may result in reduced state funding in both districts. There are going to be increased costs and likely increased assessments of the towns. And this is all obviously going to put pressure on school committees that are trying to not just maintain current educational offerings and programming, but improve those. So after looking at those baseline reports, the planning board agreed that we needed to dig deeper, and we needed to look at other options to see what's possible and where we might be able to realize efficiencies, improve educational offerings, what's feasible, what's possible. So we are now into that second phase, or about to launch that second phase of looking deeper at looking at pro formas of what things might look like if we operated in a different way. Phase one was looking at where we are now and where we likely will be in 5 years if we don't change our current models of operation. And phase two is looking at what it might look like if we change some things up. And we put together a budget for that phase two work, which is in the January 14th letter that we sent to all the boards. Our hope is that over the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to gather and analyze data about the feasibility of different options of consolidation and be able to bring forward to the community several options and solicit input from the community, from the respective districts' faculty, the administrators, students, parents, other community members, and elected officials through a combination of surveys, focus groups, and meetings like this. So if we could turn to the budget that we've put together, that's on page 3 of the letter. The budget falls into 4 buckets. The first is project management / facilitation. And those roles might be filled by 1 person or 2 people. We haven't made that decision yet. We estimated 48 hours a month of that work, which is probably a little on the low side, at an approximate $100 an hour rate, which is sort of the market rate for this kind of work. $4,800 a month times 12, that's $57,600 for 12 months. And this person will help coordinate our efforts, develop and assist in managing our work plan and timeline, assist in the development of meeting agendas and tracking progress of the board and the subcommittees, assist in managing the outside consultants that we're going to need to engage, manage communications and outreach activities, and address and facilitate board communication. The second bucket is administrative support. I should back up a little bit and say we got early on a state grant of $50,000, which had to be spent by the end of June. So we were able, with that first bucket of money, to engage Mars to do the work I described, to get the NESDEC enrollment numbers. We had a little bit of administrative support for a couple of months. But we had to spend all that money by the end of the state's fiscal year, and so that money is gone. We have no money now. And so we've been operating sort of solo since about July or August, and all this work has been done by the planning board volunteers themselves, primarily Peter and me. Administrative support is just someone to help with recording of minutes, scheduling and posting board and committee meeting agendas, getting our reports up on the website, and managing the website itself, which we hope to develop as a standalone website once we get some money. Right now, it's part of the Berkshire Hills website. Third category are consultants, and this is really where the significant money lies, where we have to go outside and hire some really deep expertise in some of these areas, including putting together those financial pro formas that assess the financial feasibility of various options and the implications on the school budget and town assessments. We want to bring in someone who can do a literature search of best educational practices that could either be enhanced or perhaps challenged through consolidation. We want to look at it from both sides. We want to put together a survey and focus group focus groups to get community input. We're going to need an operations and transportation study. Of course, busing is going to be a big challenge here if we were to consolidate. So we've got money identified for that. So the bucket for consultants is somewhere in the range of $85,000 to $115,000. These are all estimates. We haven't gone out and gotten bids yet. We're going to do that work, but these are ballpark estimates based on the conversations we've had to date. And then we've got just a little bit of money in a bucket for legal counsel. This is not the money that's going to be needed to put together a new regional school agreement. If we get that far, that's going to be a lot more that we're going to need in the legal bucket. This is just for sort of day-to-day issues that might come up that need to be addressed by outside counsel. So that's where we get the total in this range of 153.7 to 183.7 for the next 12 months of work. So what we decided to do was ask each of the 8 towns for $15,000 for a total of $120,000, 15,000 times 8. We have applied for another state grant. That application went in actually last Friday, and we've asked for $125,000. As I said, last year we got 50. I don't know that we'll get 125 this time, but we wanted to ask for as much as we possibly could. If we get 125, we're not going to need 120 from the 8 towns, and we would come back to you with a lower request. But as of today, we don't have any part of the 125. We are optimistic that we're going to get something. There's been 500,000 in total designated for this kind of work across the Commonwealth, for everyone in the Commonwealth. And we think we're well positioned to get a part of that. There are others who are looking to get a part of that as well. But as I said, we're optimistic that we're going to get a significant amount. I don't know if we're going to get the full 125. So that's the basic presentation. Peter and I are happy to answer any questions you might have. I'll turn the floor back to the chairman.
So this, just for sake of clarification, this is not a request for this year. This is a request for inclusion into next year's budget, which we'll have plenty of discussion on. And tonight's a good time to ask questions of Lucy, Peter, or myself, or I see Deb Phillips is also here, and or Mark. But this is the beginning of a discussion for this. So Lee, go ahead.
Thank you. So I know that there's there's a lot of moving pieces going ahead, and especially since it's going to be 2 to 3 years before we really get deeply immersed in this. But if other towns come to us and want to take part in this, that's obviously something that would be entertained. I'm assuming, thinking about Lee or Lennox or Richmond. That was one question. Obviously, that there'll be is there going to be like a kind of a cutoff date that other towns would have to commit before joining, or is it going to be open that if other towns wish to take part in this, that they could?
Lucy, do you want me to answer that on behalf of Berkshire Hills?
Sure, go ahead, Steve.
So Lee, this is a discrete process between Southern Berkshire and Berkshire Hills.
Okay.
Richmond and Berkshire Hills just finished with a 3-year shared services agreement. If Lee and Lennox were interested, Berkshire Hills would surely entertain the discussion, but it would be a separate process.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just curious about when you're, analyzing data and trends, if the financial stability of private schools are being taken into account. Because with COVID, I'm just curious if some of these families that have moved into our area recently, what the effect is with private schools versus the trends that we might be seeing in Berkshire Hills Regional School District, whether some of the private schools are, are in a healthy financial state, and if that would affect our trends moving forward.
Lucy?
Sure. There was actually a hope that with folks moving up to the Berkshires, that we might see a reversal of the enrollment decline that we've seen over the last 10 years, and that's projected to continue for the next 10 years. And we didn't. Enrollment was actually down this year in both districts, although less so in Berkshire Hills than Southern Berkshire. And some of that enrollment decline may be attributable to folks deciding to homeschool this year because of COVID. So yes, enrollment does seem to be up in some private schools in the area, but in the Berkshire Hills and Southern Berkshire, we're continuing to see downward enrollment.
So just following that up, so there has been increased enrollment in the private schools?
That's what I've read in the press. I don't have any independent data on that, but I have read some press stories that have reported that.
Okay. Thank you.
Just as a parent who has talked with a lot of parents that are sending their kids to school, I do know not a lot, but I do know a few public school families that chose to bite the bullet and send their kids to private school for the year because some of the schools were able to open up full time. So that may change back next year. So I think it's worth following, and I feel very confident that this group and the districts will do that. I guess I had a question about asking for less money than what it seems you will need to make this happen. And I realize you're hoping for a grant. I'm just hoping that if you do end up needing more money, that you'll ask the towns to continue to split it evenly, because this doesn't seem like a large sum of money for each town to put towards trying to figure out the right solution for this. So
yeah, I really appreciate that comment. If we get 50,000, right, or more, I think we'll be in pretty good shape for the next 12 months. We're cognizant that we're asking the same amount from the little towns like Alford and West Stockbridge as we're asking from the larger towns like Great Barrington and Sheffield. And as you can imagine, you're actually the third on our list of select boards. And we just got off a call with the town of Alford, and the question was legitimately raised. Why are you asking of the town of Alford the same amount as you're asking from the town of Great Barrington that has a budget that is many, many times more than Alford's? And my answer was, the governance of this planning board is in some ways dictated by statute, and the teeny little town of Alford gets the same number of members on this planning board as the town of Great Barrington, even though the number of students you have enrolled in public school is many, many multiples of the number of the town of Alford. And I, as a resident of the town of Alford, have the same vote as Steve Bannon, as a resident of the town of Great Barrington and the school committee member. So we thought it appropriate, at least when we're talking about numbers like $15,000, to ask the same amount of each of the member towns. And so far, that's been acceptable to the smaller towns, and I hope that continues.
Two just factual basis to piggyback on what Lucy is saying. The way this is set up by regulation, Southern Berkshire actually has 5 towns, so they have actually more votes. We haven't weighted the votes, but that hasn't been a problem, and I don't foresee that as a problem. It's just an interesting dynamic. The other is the Berkshire Hills Regional School District has allocated $3,000 now to keep this committee moving ahead, because there's no way to move ahead they have asked 3,000 from Berkshire Hills and 3,000 from Southern Berkshire, and I'm sure Southern Berkshire will also give it so that we can make it to the end of this fiscal year. And the town of Great Barrington and other towns can then include the 15,000 in their budget.
Can I add to that, or to this point, which is when I was on the 8-town committee that I guess birthed this committee, and my understanding then, and I think it's still the case, is ultimately the vote has to be unanimous among the 8 towns, right? To make this happen, every town has to be involved. It has to. So to that extent, that there is an equality, and on behalf of everyone in Great Barrington, I'm appreciative that we're not being asked to pay 70% of the cost. Is this? Are we acting tonight? I mean, this has to go with the finance committee through the budget process to town meeting. Do we do anything tonight, or just get our questions answered?
No, we'll just answer questions tonight. I've invited the finance committee tonight, but they all, and I haven't looked to see who's on and who isn't, they all were not able to attend. So we've asked, Ann has asked Lucy and Peter to be available at one of our first budget meetings if the finance committee has questions at that point. And they're welcome to ask tonight. I see a hand raised tonight. I'm flying this plane speaking, which can be.
And over here, thank you. Thanks, Lucy and Peter. And
yeah.
Steve.
Let me look here. I see a hand up, and it's Ann. So I will, Ann O'Dwyer, the chairperson of the Finance Committee. Ann, go right ahead.
Hi, Steve. Yes, thank you. I just wanted to let you know that Lucy and I have been in touch, and she has generously agreed to come to the joint Finance Committee Select Board meeting when we address this budget item. So she'll come just for that particular item. So thank you, Lucy, on that. And I guess I just had a quick question, if that's okay, since I'm here.
Sure.
Yep. I'm just wondering, I know there's a finance subcommittee of the planning board, and I'm just wondering, I know they're charged with looking at the effects on assessments and town budgets. Have they had any findings thus far that could be presented, or it hasn't even gotten that far?
It hasn't gotten that far. What they've looked at thus far are the baseline analyses that Mars has done, what it would look like in both Berkshire Hills and Southern Berkshire if we continued on as we are now, and identified the data and additional resources they think they're going to need in order to look at the feasibility of consolidation of the two districts.
Oh, thanks so much. I should let you know, I did go to the website, the planning board website, to look for those reports. It was a little hard to find, but maybe, Lucy, I'll send you an email and just get directed to the specific reports.
Okay.
Okay.
Part of our bridge funding budget was to get our own website so that we could make it a lot more accessible, all these reports. So we're hoping within the next few months to have our own web page where it will be very easy to find, but I will direct you to the specific address where you can pull those up.
Great, thank you, and looking forward to seeing you at the upcoming meeting.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate the support, and we'll be talking again, I'm sure.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Peter. Let me just ask, anyone have any questions before we move ahead?
No, this is wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you,
Okay.
Peter. We really
Bye-bye.
appreciate you taking your time. I know this is not part of your day job. Appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving ahead or behind? 6A, Lovers Lane and Route 7 intersection discussion with Mass DOT and Great Barrington DPW. Mark, do you want to lead this discussion? Or?
Sure. In the meantime, would you promote Francisca Hemming and Patrick Tierney, and also Sean Van Dusen? So at our last meeting, I was asked to add this topic to tonight's agenda and ask DOT's District 1 staff in Lenox, as well as Sean Van Dusen, to join us, our Public Works Superintendent, to join us tonight for a conversation on the intersection of Lovers Lane and Route 7.
And as soon as I find the other two, I'd be glad to do that. Mark, feel free to help.
Yeah, I'm jumping in right now.
Thank you.
I see Patrick now. And
Don must be Town of Great Barrington?
he's all set.
Okay, thank you.
Did the board have any specific questions they wanted to ask to get the conversation started?
Lee, I think you may have brought this up, so.
Yeah, I mean,
Are you to
just,
go first?
sure, I mean, just, obviously you have a presentation, so I'm anxious to hear, you know, how we're gonna address this dangerous intersection. I'll keep it open.
I wasn't expecting the DOT staff to make a presentation tonight. I really just invited them to engage in an early conversation with us about whether we want to explore some work at that intersection, whether we want to explore closing that road off to one-way traffic. And of course, this is just the beginning of a very long conversation if that is the case. But more than anything, I just wanted to get the conversation started tonight. So they're not prepared to make any presentation to the board.
So let me start by repeating what's been said out there, which is maybe it'd be a good idea to close the road entirely at that end. There's supposed to be a dead end from the other side, so you couldn't get on or off Route 7. And it's been suggested that maybe it'd be one way off of Route 7, so nobody is crossing. Maybe out of Lover's Lane, there would be no left turn. So so like those three different options. You know, the concern is that there was one recent fatality there and many near misses. I know DOT has actual numbers as opposed to just what we feel. So that's what people have been saying. That's probably a place to start with the discussion.
Why don't we see if either the members of the DOT have any comments that they want to make?
This is Francisca Hemming here, District Highway Director. So we saw the inquiry from Mark and Sean regarding the roadway being set up to a one-way and coming off in the lower road by the school. And you have jurisdiction. Number one, you have jurisdiction over the road. So, you know, whatever you decide to do, we will support it. And at this point, we did look at some of the crash data at that intersection. We didn't have a lot. We don't know about the misses. We also requested additional crash reports if we have more. But the traffic engineer also did an evaluation of that intersection. And when we look at the signage, we look at the speed. We really didn't find anything wrong with that. It's, you know, like the sight distance was appropriate for the speed limit, and we also enhanced the signage at the intersection. So the way we left it with the conversation was, if the town decided to do it a one-way, we needed to do additional signage in Route 7 to, you know, to make sure that people know what direction we were going, or put some signs prior to that. It will be fine with us. And Pat Tierney, he's our traffic engineer. He's on the line too, and he can tell you a little bit more about the crash history of the intersection and his study, because he did a small evaluation on that intersection. Pat, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think I just unmuted myself also. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, so we did you know, this intersection has never been on our radar in any of the lists we keep, you know, as far as high crash locations and things of that nature. And, you know, so the incident happened back in December, and, you know, we were asked to look at it. And so I did a little research using, you know, our crash database. And, you know, at the intersection itself, we found, of course, the one that happened in December. And then I believe we only had one other angle type crash, and may have been, you know, might have been listed as possible injury. You know, not a serious injury, but what we haven't seen is the actual crash reports. But, you know, our database, you know, gives us the, you know, all the data we need to see to get the basics So again, if there's anything, say for instance, that the Great Barrington Police or the state police are aware of that maybe we wouldn't be aware. I don't know if there's anyone from the Great Barrington Police today, or if anybody saw any input from the Great Barrington Police. But again, when we look at using that crash data, and then when we went out and looked at the intersection, again, it didn't rise to the level that we saw the need to take any action other than we changed around a few signs. And of course, we're gonna keep checking it throughout the summer and stuff when the foliage comes back to make sure there's no overgrowth or anything like that there. But so I guess we're just here today to see what the town wants to do, or if they want to push forward with anything, and offer whatever assistance or input you'd like from us.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to. Oh, you want to go first?
It sounds like you're
Yeah.
saying,
So. Go ahead.
sounds like you're saying that you still have jurisdiction over that road.
We can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's a child.
It sounds like you're saying if you did have jurisdiction over this road, you wouldn't change anything. You wouldn't be closing it or making it one way. Is that correct?
We would not, and Fran, Fran's boss, I can, she wants to speak, but my advice to my superiors is essentially, that wouldn't be something that we would drive, because again, there's people that would be affected that are, constituents of the board, and, that wouldn't be something that we would want to ram down anybody's throat, because again, there are impacts. So, even if we thought that was something that we wanted to push forward, we'd still want to see, the town board of selectmen and elected and appointed officials, be on board and kind of be the driver of the process. So we're open to it, but, we didn't certainly suggest that or come up with the idea. So I don't know if Fran would like to add anything.
So I go along with that. That's one of the important things that you guys have to take into account is how you're going to deal with your emergency response. That was the big thing.
So that was my question. I'd be interested to know the negative impact. So such as, emergency response, how many households will be affected, what's the effect, if any, with bus transportation. But I do feel strongly that we should do something, and that it's worth very, very seriously working towards a solution. I think just going by crash data is not just one element that we need to look at. I know that just from my own experience and watching people kind of navigate that intersection, that is troublesome. Whether there crashes or not, I don't think we should just rely on that data. But I think it's worth really exploring some, the one-way solution. And then once we get to, how much that would cost in terms of the negative impacts of the budget, then take it from there.
So Lee, what I would recommend, and then Kate, I'll recognize you, is that we need to get a meeting of the stakeholders. That would be the next thing we would do.
Correct.
The neighbors, the school district, emergency personnel, the state back on, the DPW. We need to get everyone into, and I say this pre-pandemic, one room, but in this case, one virtual room, and have a discussion to hear opinions from every group, Great Barrington Police Department. So I would think that would be our next step, would be to have a meeting that's just devoted to this this problem, and to see, we may be able to solve it by making it one way, or Ed gave 3 different ways, but what other problems are we causing by doing it? So before we go ahead and do something. So I think that makes sense. Kate, go right
And I
ahead.
think it's important to open up to the public too, because I think there's people that are concerned, not just stakeholders, but obviously the general public, that just make sure it's an open meeting that people can air their concerns.
Lee, every meeting we have is an open meeting, and because we are driven by the taxpayers, every taxpayer of Great Barrington would be invited and encouraged to participate.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess I was basically going to say what you said, Steve. But I was wondering, because we have kind of recently gone through this process. Well, I guess I have 2 things. One, I would love to hear from Sean, but maybe that can wait if he doesn't have much to add until we kind of meet all together. I apologize, my son's playing with blocks in the room. But I did wanted, is a public hearing part of the process of road closure or change of direction? Because I know we went through this process with Lake Mansfield Road. And obviously we talked about that a lot, and it was a very busy meeting, but I don't remember if it was specifically some sort of public hearing. And I guess what I'm saying is I totally agree with Steve that we need to have this, but is there a specific forum type that we need to have to move forward with making changes to road directions?
Mark, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to? You're muted, Mark.
Sorry, Sean's on the line.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that question, to be honest with you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So I reached out to Beta Engineering to come up with a proposal to give us some analysis and some alternatives in terms of what it would take to one-way the road, to close the road, what the impacts would be. It might be pertinent to have them do a small study so we have a sort of criteria to operate on when we have that public meeting.
I think that's a good idea. I know to close the road, we have to do a public hearing, at least I think we do. But any other changes, do we need a public hearing? I mean, it doesn't really matter to me because we're going to get input from citizens, stakeholders anyways. So the format doesn't really matter. Ultimately, we'll have to vote on the way we want it. It's just as we get closer, we'll just have to figure out what that format will be.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Anyone else? Francisca and Phil, you'll hear back from us because we'll invite you to another meeting, and we appreciate your input.
Oh, that's fine, but I just agree with Sean that having Beta to start to look at an analysis, that's a good move. And I'd be very cautious because I always think that, as I mentioned, with that emergency response is important. And having the road one way, you always have that option open with emergency response versus closing it. So that's something that I would caution on that. And we're here, like as I mean, if we need to do an improvement to the signage wise to the intersection, we're open to that. And we can also reach out to Boston if there is any further guidance that we need. But I think Sean has it under control with that, and keep us posted. We'd be willing to participate in any meeting if you need us to.
We will definitely invite you, Francisca and Phil. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
So Steve, in terms of a timeline, are we thinking like the next couple meetings or a month?
I don't think we'll do this. We'll see what our agenda looks like. I think we may set a special date to do this separately because it's going to take an hour and a half probably by the time we hear from all the stakeholders and we hear from citizens and we get I think the timeline will be driven by Beta Engineering, and I think Sean's right. We need to see what our options are. So I think we have a little bit of time, but we'll do it as quick as we can. And we'll start to set a date. We'll start to either do a doodle poll or something to see when we can get a separate date. Anyone else? Okay. 2021 town meeting and election calendar. Jen, I think, is on the line. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve, I'm just looking for her now. I just promoted Michael also.
I promoted Jen, and I hope it's a right Jen. So
in your packet for tonight, you should have a town meeting calendar and a town election calendar for 2021. And I will just add that we circulated a revised copy today, and I apologize that did not make the packet, but once we finalize these, we will get both posted on our website. So I'll stop there and try.
Jen, do you have anything you want to add before we entertain questions? Or
can everybody hear me first of all?
We can.
Okay, all right. So I guess I'll just start first with the town meeting calendar. Just before we even get into any of it, I did the citizen petition time. I did not do originally 30 days on the sheet that I submitted. So just so you know, the select board could close the citizen petition date on Tuesday, March 2nd. So that's one change to that one as well. I was thinking that it was just like 4 weeks, but it has to be 30 days, at least 30 days.
Michael, do you have anything to add to this?
Actually, no. I assume that the emergency will still be in effect so that we can schedule a meeting in June.
So one of the things to realize, and Eileen brought this up earlier, that for the town election, and this is tied in, so I'm not on the wrong page. The state allowed us last year to move the town election it was kind of variable. That has not happened this year. The town election is tied to March 11th. So unless we're willing to meet in the very cold weather in early May outdoors, because as Michael said, we're assuming the pandemic will still be in effect. In the very odd scenario, the election will occur before the town meeting. And that will have some ramifications. It's not impossible, but it will have some ramifications.
I guess I wanted to mention about the 2-night town meeting. I know we had agreed on doing them both in the same week. But what I'm wondering about, knowing that it seems like absolutely one of those 2 meetings is going to be a 2-night meeting. And to have 3 meetings in 1 week is certainly a lot to ask any citizen. And it's going to be really hard for me. I mean, I can say it's going to be really hard for me as a parent of small children to do that 3 nights in 1 week, especially if we're still in pandemic place.
I don't think our intention, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, was to have 3 meetings in 1 week. I think we would do the 7th and then the 10th. And then if we had to continue, it would be the week after.
I think that's right.
But it depends on how we finish that meeting. I mean, if we run to 2 later, we don't have a quorum, it has to be the next night. Is that correct? So
well, that's right. If we do run out of a quorum, we would have to wait until Thursday, most likely.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the next night.
It does not have to be the next night, particularly if we have taken the trouble to set 2 nights in advance. Also, bear in mind that our rules will be slightly different this time. At the last meetings, the town repealed the bylaw that they made it much more difficult to cut off debate. Mm-hmm. And so we might be more efficient, depending.
Okay, I just wanted to point that out, as we have been seeing our meetings kind of hit that 2-night mark for the 1 night that we planned. Mm-hmm. That I just kind of want to make sure that we're keeping that in mind. And as much as it's a lot to ask people to come multiple weeks, I think it's going to be easier to do that than like 3 or 4 nights in a row. Sorry. It's rough.
I mean, I definitely think it makes a difference of what's really on the warrant as well. If there's a lot of zoning on there, it might be longer. If there's a lot of citizen petitions. So I think it all depends on the warrant too. But I think everybody's kind of hopeful it'll take place in 2 nights and that's it.
Eileen, go right ahead. Eileen, I've unmuted both your personalities, so one of you talk.
Sorry, I thought I was unmuted, but I obviously wasn't.
I think you muted your computer and not your phone.
You're right. Anyway, has anybody asked anybody in the state about having this town election after town meeting?
Jen, do you want to answer that?
So right now, the state legislature, how they have it is any local election up until the end of March. They made provisions for early voting and things like that. They have not made anything else as of tonight's date. There's been nothing for any elections, which is the majority of Massachusetts, for anything after that, up until the end of the fiscal year. So unfortunately, and I have not heard of anything that they're going to change anything different. I think they're going to keep it only until the end of March. So unfortunately, we're out of luck.
I was wondering if perhaps through MMA or just even as an individual town, it would be possible to initiate some action.
We can certainly ask Smitty and Adam their thoughts on this. We could vote on it tonight. Whatever we vote tonight's not cast in stone. We've changed it before. So we certainly can ask to see if it's possible to do it. And if it is, then we can always change.
I have two other questions about the election calendar. Should I ask that now or wait
Yeah, no,
a
go
minute?
ahead.
Okay. I noticed on the revised one that you sent us on the last day to register to vote, that Tuesday, April 21st, it had times from 4 to 8 p.m. Does that mean you're going to be staying late that day, or was that just an accident? And then my second question is, with town hall being closed, do you think you could say here, and then can it get up on our website or social media somehow, how people can get election papers or nomination papers from you?
Yeah, yep. So the first question, the 4 to 8 p.m., no, that wasn't a mistake, but I just wanted to make it very clear. We always, on the last day to register to vote, have to be open until 8. So I just wanted people to know that they had the 4 to 8 p.m. So that's that question. And then the other one, for anything, whether it be the citizen petition papers that they want to come in and get, or the nomination papers, we're going to do it just like we do everything else right now, which is going to be by appointment. So they can call our office, and then we have a table with the plexiglass out in the hallway by the front door, and that's where we meet with any of the people that we have appointments with. And so they'll just have to do it there, because unfortunately they do have to be in person, especially for the nomination papers. So.
And you're right, Kate, we'll advertise that very well, because it'll be a change in what we normally do. Anyone else with any questions? Jen, do you want to say anything about either the election calendar or the town meeting calendar, anything else, or Michael, before we'll vote to accept it, subject to our changing our mind?
Only the observation in response to Eileen's question. We have always had our elections after the town meeting. They don't really depend upon each other. Both the finance committee and the select board are continuing bodies, and it's conceivable to have a town meeting after a time in which some members of the select board or finance committee have changed over. That shouldn't cause it might make for interesting discussions if somebody ran for office on the proposition that the select board was all wrong about something. But the select board setting an agenda for the meeting is really independent of the election.
Thank you. Michelle Levere, go right ahead.
Michelle Levere, 70 Division Street. I respectfully disagree with Michael. As you have to realize is that the people who sit at the table during annual town meeting, the select board and the finance committee, even the planning board, does the incredible amount of work in preparation of annual town meeting. Not just work, study. We're studying a lot of information. We're doing our homework. And in this scenario, what could possibly happen is someone could earn a seat on the finance committee, earn a seat on the select board, earn a seat on a planning board, and be at the head of the table at annual town meeting, and not have the experience or the study, or not to insult anyone, or the knowledge that it takes to present an annual town meeting. So I, for one, as a matter of fact, when you were talking, my first thought was contacting Adam Hines at Smitty Pignatelli regarding this, because I do think it does come with some serious ramifications. And I, for one, am, if the state says we have to do it, you have no choice. But I agree with an effort to not do it prior to annual town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. So I would say tonight, Jen, would you like this approved tonight, or can we wait 2 weeks?
The only thing that is hindering on it is, I've got dates on there before your next meeting. To open the citizen petition time and for the nomination papers for them to become available. The nomination papers is not as important, but the time frame for the citizen petition, you're going to start squeezing, the time frame for everything, because it kind of just, it's like a domino effect. So, but it's completely up to you.
So
I just do want to add in, Steve.
Yes.
They have a legal counsel for the elections division that fights for everything and has fought, and they originally asked to have it until June 30th. And that's what they made as a recommendation, but out in Boston is not listening, and they only did till March 30th. So, I mean, it's worth the shot to reach out, I guess, to them, but do know that it has already been requested, by the elections division, and they didn't listen. So,
okay, let's make a motion to accept this or changing our
Make
mind.
a motion to approve both the town meeting and the town election calendar as amended. I'll wait for a second.
Sure, second.
Is it possible to say with the 2 date? I think it was just one change on each calendar, just so we all know and everybody sitting here can see it.
or did you wanted me to say that, correct, Ed?
Yeah.
Okay, so from the original ones that were submitted on the town meeting calendar, the select board closed the citizen petition time is going to be moved to Tuesday, March 2nd. And then for the town election calendar, of course, I don't have my old one in front of me. I do believe I had added in the last day to post the warrant was Tuesday, May 4th.
Nomination papers was changed to March 23rd.
Okay, the last day to submit nomination papers was
Yeah,
changed
and
to
then
March 23rd.
And then the last day to register to vote was changed from Tuesday, April 20th.
Oh yeah, that's right.
To Wednesday, the
April
21st.
Yes.
And
I
we'll
didn't
put this.
know how to count on that one, sorry.
No, we'll put this all on the website.
Oh yeah, it'll all be on my section of the website.
Perfect. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, Lee.
Aye.
Kate.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Ed.
Aye.
And I, and this will be on the next agenda, not Wednesday night, but the following, our next regularly scheduled meeting, just to come back with a response from the state. If, in fact, we will have a response, whether we like it or not was the other question. So it's a unanimous vote. Jen, Michael, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Steve, before we move on, I'm unfortunately at home and it's my children have hit a wall, so I'm going to excuse myself. But I did have some questions and concerns about the personnel policy. So I was hoping that you may be able to wait until our next meeting, and you guys can decide that. But I'll send Mark my questions.
We're doing that next. Is there time for you to hang in with that?
I can try.
Okay.
I can say my things really
Why don't
quickly if
just
you don't
get
mind me
questions
go.
out? If possible, we'd like to approve this tonight. If not, we won't, but it's been a decade in the making, so they can wait.
Yeah. No, and these things take so much work. I'm so impressed. Even if you have other town ones to look at, this is just such an amazing amount of work. I had questions in the dress code part of the policy, where it says hair, sideburns, mustache, and beard shall be clean and neatly trimmed. I think that is ultimately vague enough, but I just want to make sure that I think some of it is that is left to interpretation, and I just want to make sure that people are not being discriminated against hairstyles that are intrinsic to their ethnicities. And so I don't know. I know a lot of school districts have been working really hard to update those policies to reflect that. I just wanted to maybe look into that further. And I guess in that the other thing would be tattoos. And I do know that some people can have tattoos of hate crime nature or hate speech. And I think that we need to have something in there that would potentially ask for that, not, at least to be covered. And then I had a couple questions about harassment, I guess either between social media or just harassment in general. I can't tell if that covers if somebody were to harass, whether sexually or otherwise, somebody outside of a workspace, what kind of ramifications there would be. So those were my questions.
Great, good questions, all of them. Thank you, Kate.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple.
Go ahead. No.
I sent Mark just a few typos, so I won't go through those. Page 12, where we list the holidays, Columbus Day, could we or should we / Indigenous Peoples Day?
Just change.
Right. And then the other one I have is page 30, the marijuana policy, which is highlighted on the page. It isn't clear to me what that means. Here's the part. It says the town acknowledges that the state of Massachusetts has legalized the limited recreational use of marijuana. Marijuana remains federally illegal, and the town is required to act in accordance with federal law when enacting this policy. Maybe we want to say something like, for the purposes of this policy, marijuana is considered a controlled substance. Add that to it just so it's clear. Because I think what you're saying is, it doesn't matter that Massachusetts says it's illegal, we still are enforcing the federal.
Right. If you notice at the top of the sheet, this is under the CDL license section, and we do consider it to be a controlled substance when you have a CDL license.
So then on G, a little further down, if marijuana is prescribed, like in other controlled substances, does that make it okay? So I don't know the answer to that, but neither does anyone reading this. That's my only suggestion. Otherwise, I agree with Kate. It's a very thorough piece of work.
If I can just mention, this was a project that was identified as a high priority of the board. Started here. This is now 18 months in the making, and this is our first major overhaul since 1991. So this is a 30-year leap forward in our personnel policies. And I did want to also acknowledge the work of Karen Fink, our treasurer collector, and Sue Carmel, our finance director. They put an incredible amount of time in this project. This was a grant-funded project, and it's super exciting for us to bring this forward and finally have a policy in place that we as the default HR directors here in Great Barrington, to have in place to guide us through difficult situations that arise from time to time.
But what is the
I don't know. What are our options? It's too late to bring this up on Wednesday, right?
Right, we're not bringing up Wednesday. Would have to be the first February meeting.
I can address the questions that you have come back on the 8th with a revised version, if that's.
Is that soon enough? Your other option is to quickly scribble something now that we vote on.
I would feel more comfortable because we're dealing with 3 union agreements and state and federal laws, having an opportunity to bounce, particularly the marijuana question, off our attorney before I respond to that one.
Okay.
Well, I was a little under. I said this was a decade in the making. It's 3 decades. I guess 2 weeks. Okay.
We'll be just fine.
Yeah. Okay, so we will take this up. It will be on our next agenda, not Wednesday night, but the agenda after that. Thank you for hanging in, Kate.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody. Have a good night.
You too. E, request to subordinate a real property lien from CDBG FY14 Housing Rehabilitation Program. Chris, is this yours or to explain?
Oh, sure. Happy to do that. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Sure. This is a request, a homeowner who received a grant through the FY14 regional program, which you've seen before. Previous folks have requested either partial or full forgiveness of the liens. This is just a request from a homeowner who they're seeking to refinance their mortgage. The liens are in first position, and they're just looking to make this subordinate to the new mortgage. The CDBG grant program rules allow it. It's entirely up to the town as the program administrator. So this is in the unlikely instance there's a foreclosure or something and not everybody could be paid back. The town would not be in the priority position. Given that you've forgiven other liens totally, this doesn't seem to be a significant ask based on your previous policy positions, but it is totally up to the board on what you would wish to do here.
Start with a motion?
Sure.
Motion to approve.
A second. So I have a motion by Ed, a second by Bill. Discussion.
So they're basically just, they're going to continue to pay the loan back. If they sell the house in 5 more years, they pay whatever percentage they would owe. The loan isn't going away, it's just being.
Right. But if they sell the house for less than they owe the bank, we don't get anything.
Yes.
That's the risk we're taking.
Yeah.
You're both correct. Yes, you're both correct.
Is this a requirement? Why are they seeking to do this? Is this a requirement from the bank, or is this just
probably?
Yeah. They want to refinance at a lower rate, so it'll be a different mortgage that we're behind.
The lender probably wants to know that they're first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
So I have a motion and I have a second. Roll call. Lee.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Ed.
Aye.
And aye. It's unanimous. Thank you, Chris, for explaining that.
Sure.
Okay. Citizen speak time. Trevor Forbes, go right ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Trevor Forbes, 325 North Plain Road. It would just seem to me that a lot of what we've been hearing this evening, particularly in relation to the annual town meeting and the elections, seem to be designed to be really rather, I would actually almost go as far as to say undemocratic in terms of basically disturbing the whole flow of business, very much the way that Michelle has pointed out. I heard what Michael Wise had to say, and I really do feel that we should make sure that the appropriate process is put in place to allow a proper evaluation of the annual town meeting points. That's really all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mr. Forbes. Anyone else? Seeing no one, do I have anyone for, let's see, select board time? Lee?
Nothing.
Bill?
No, nothing here.
Ed?
Nothing.
And I have nothing. Media time. Hearing nothing, by unanimous consent, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for a very good meeting.